Hi. If you follow me on this channel, you probably realized that I've been a little inactive. Yes, some part of that is definitely my thesis, which is taking all of my free time, but another big part of that is that I finally opened my own business. So now I run Studio Catherine Larson, which is a research and design practice that I take care of. What that looks like is, for example, right now I'm in Poland. I am building a installation for the Baltic Sea as one of the lead designers on this project for the Gdynia Design Festival. And I have other work lined up in the form of art residencies, research residencies, and other installation building things with my experimental materials and all those sorts of things. But there are 3 things that I wish I knew before starting my own business. And today I'm going to share them with you because a lot of people approach me, they ask me what it's like to run a business, what it's like to transition during a student time period to running a business. So I'm going to share some tips and tricks about that. The number one thing I wish I knew about running a business before starting it was honestly how easy it would be to set up things. Really, in the Netherlands, you can register as an eenzaksmansfirma. That is a one-person firm, a freelancer sort of job, and that took literally 2 days of work, 1 day to sign up, 1 day to go into the KVK, the Chamber of Commerce, and my business was established. So it was pretty quick and easy, all things considered. So yeah, actually the bureaucratic paperwork and all that sort of thing was very minimal and very easy to understand. And they did it in English for me, which was also very nice. The other part of starting my own business was I quickly found a really good book holder that could take care of my VAT and also my outside of the European Union tax statements on my earnings for my business. And what I did was I just went into the local expat community and asked if there was somebody that they recommended that they really liked working with, somebody who was ideally very responsive to email. And I really found the perfect bank accountant. Her name is Hannah from Hannah Helps. She's definitely one of the best accountants I've ever worked with. So I'm all cleared up in that department. Which brings me to my second point of things that I wish I knew before starting a business. The second thing is definitely when you start in the fiscal year matters for your business, especially for the Netherlands. The Netherlands has a entrepreneurship tax deduction, but you can only get that if you've worked, I think, over 1,000 hours in a year. It might be around 1,200 hours in a year. I started my business in the 4th quarter in October, so I didn't make that tax deduction. And then I also earned a decent amount of money for a starting business because I already had clients lined up, which resulted in a very large tax bill for last year, even though as a full year, I did not earn very much at all. But it's just because I had just started my business, I had a large influx of customers, and I didn't have that many costs to my business yet in the 4th quarter. Actually, all my costs came after January 1st. The third thing that I wish people had at least talked about more with businesses and starting your own business is how much harder you're going to have to work. When I started my own business, I was also working part-time. I was working 30 hours a week, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. And that was because I needed this stable income every month. There were definitely months where I had 0 income, and then there were months where I had a flood of income, and I needed to have a baseline amount every month before I managed to be able to reduce my hours. So that meant from October, November, December, January, February, March, and April, I was working an average of 100 hours a week when I started tallying up my hours. So that was between my part-time job, my business, as well as school. And I only spent about 15 hours a week on school, to be perfectly honest. So the bulk of that time was just going to working to trying to sustain both businesses, both incomes. And then eventually now I'm at the point where I have enough work lined up where I was able to walk away from my part-time job. But it is definitely a ton of work. It's something people don't really talk about in the industry. A lot of times you might see somebody just immediately quit everything and start their own business. And what you might not realize is they have loans, they have savings that allow them to do that. Or in the case of many designers, they have very wealthy parents that are willing to they're willing to subsidize their child's design practice. I have definitely met some designers where, yeah, their parents subsidize their income. That's fine. You know, you just got to use the tools that you have at your disposal. If that's rich family, that's rich family. But for the rest of us, that might be working another job. It might be trying to find a grant, which also takes time to apply for. And it's something that we don't really talk about, but the cost of time, the cost of your time then becomes very, very expensive. So these are 3 things I wish people had talked about more. I'm going to throw a little extra one in for bonus. Number 4. The other thing people don't talk about, at least, is how much to bill. Billing practices, especially in design, architecture, or art, super shady, super murky, super difficult to understand. If I'm doing any sort of drafting work for other people, if I was doing it in Denmark, for example, I would know precisely what to charge because the union publishes salaries, and I have other people that I know that are working freelance in Denmark that are all very transparent about how much they charge. In the Netherlands, it's like a bottomless pit of like, what the heck? How much do you charge for building an art installation? How much do you charge for all these sorts of things? It's so hard for me to predict. Sometimes I've accidentally highballed people because a living wage is higher, especially after inflation now, than many art foundations are willing to give. It's difficult to predict. I've gotten into the practice now of finding other young people like me that are the same age group category that maybe have the same experience background, and I just ask them point and blank, what do you charge? Are you willing to tell me how much you charge? And then from that baseline, I am able to come up with an offer. But it's not, it's kind of crappy how difficult it is. I know it's even less transparent in the US because the US considers that price fixing, but if everyone's lowballing each other all the time in these industries, in these creative industries, what ends up happening very quickly is it becomes a race to the bottom. So I always try to say my time is important, the work I produce is important, so therefore you should pay me a reasonable wage for the work that I'm doing. I've always believed this fundamentally. It's something that I also do when I do work with other people. I believe that as a leader, you're supposed to make sure that everyone gets paid and everyone gets paid fairly. So that was my little extra bonus for you. I hope that this maybe clears up some confusion or maybe inspires you guys to take a stab at opening your own business.